Hello and welcome to Aladdin TechTips. Today I'll be showing you how to create a write Java program. It will write to a file, any file that you choose. So grab your favorite IDE and let's begin. So first you want to import java.io because we'll be using this for the file writer and print writer. Next, create a public class. I'm going to call this write and a main method. In IDEs like Eclipse, you can already have these inherited Java strings, which come with the public class and the main method. So we're going to add a try, and now we're going to call upon the file writer that we use the Java import for, and call it file writer fw equals new file writer, and read and write is the file name that I've chosen. And always remember to put .txt so it prints to a text file. Next, what we want to do is call upon the print writer, and we're going to call this pw, new print writer, and then we're going to put fw in the brackets. And this is because we want the print writer to print our input to the file that the file writer has selected. We have selected for the file writer. Okay, so next we're gonna add an integer. Let's say int x equals 1. And now if we say pw dot println, pw because that's the print writer object, and we're gonna say print line print x. Okay, one too many brackets. And then we have to close the print writer, pw.close right after here. And one more here. And catch IO exception. Because without catching the exception, the try block won't work. I think I have done this wrong. I think this should go up here. And this should go here. We don't need this anymore. And like this. And then another curly bracket. And we write system.out.println. In case there's an error, it will print out error. And then the programmer will know that there's an error in their program. So x is equal to 1. Let's see if it actually prints out x to the file read and write. Run. Okay. Read and write. There's our text document, and there's a 1. That's the value of x. So we know that it's working. This is a very simple way to write to a file. So now, let's change it up a bit. Int n1 for number 1, int n2, number 2, and int roll. So you're going to have 2 dice that roll and come up with a random number, up to 6. So we'll have a maximum of 12 and a minimum of 2. So now we're going to create a for loop for int, let's call it n for number, equals 1. This is the initial value for n. N should be greater than, or less than, or equal to, how many numbers would we like to print out? Let's say 50. And n plus plus until it actually prints out 50 or less. Okay. Now that we have our for statement, we're gonna have n1 equals int. This is for the value, a random value. I'm gonna say math dot random, and then times 6. So whatever the value is times 6, and then plus 1. So the minimum value for number 1 could be 1, because 1 times 6, or it could be all the way up to 6. And then we're going to do the same thing for n2. n2 equals int, and then math dot random, and times 6 plus 1. Now we have our n1 and n2 done. We're going to have our int roll. So roll won't be random. Roll will equal n1 plus n2. So this will give us a total for both our rolls, with again the maximum being 12 and the minimum being 2. So now we're going to pw.println, and we're going to print out roll. Not roll like that, roll the integer. And we're also going to pw.close as we did before. Oops, forgot the semicolon. And we have our catch IO exception statement already done. And we should be ready to go. Let's just tell ourselves when it actually prints it out, just for confirmation that it actually has printed out 50 numbers. We will just say 50 numbers have been randomly generated in file read and write .txt. Let's just say dot write and then semicolon. And now our code should be done, no errors. Let's just call it read and write 2 or 3 or 4. 4 works. Okay, so read and write 4. Now it should print to read and write 4.txt. So let's run. Okay, and it gives us the confirmation 50 numbers have randomly been generated in read and write 4. So let's search for that. Read and write 4. There it is. Click it, and there's 50 numbers, with the maximum being 12 and the minimum being 2. As you can see, we have printed 50 numbers randomly generated. Now, to recap, we import java.io so we can call the file writer and print writer. This is just our class name, and this is the main method. The try block is there in case of an error, and then we imported the file writer, which allows us to print to a certain file. So whichever file we write between these two brackets, but make sure it's txt. Next, we imported the print writer, which actually does the printing, and then fw is the location for the print. Next, we have 3 integers. int1 is just number 1, int2 number 2, and the roll is the total. So we've declared our variables. Now for the for loop, you have a for loop, and then the first section is always the initial value, which is int n equals 1, semicolon. Then there's the condition, which is n less than or equal to 50, so it prints out 50, and then semicolon, n plus plus, so it increments all the way until it reaches 50. Then we have our two random math generators for n1 and n2. So these generate numbers from 1 to 6, just like a real dice. And same thing for this one. Generate numbers from 1 to 6. Now the roll, the total. So for the total, all we do is use a concatenation, and n1 plus n2 equals total, because they're both the numbers. Then we're going to print pw.println and print out roll. We're going to use pw because that's the print writer which prints to the file. So print pw.println roll will print out the total. Prints out the total to the file. And we always have to close the print writer or else it won't print. So after the first curly brace, for the for statement, we close the pw print writer, and then closes print writer, and then we have our catch statement for our try block. So the catch statement is used for finding errors, and if there is an error, it lets the programmer know that there is one. If you just say system.out.println and whatever you want to say, error, problem, issue, lets the programmer know of the error. And we close that exception, and we just print out system.out.println just as a confirmation that numbers have been printed to the file. And we just close our public class and our main method, and everything should be good to go. So, I hope you've learned something from this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope all of you have a great day. Goodbye.